Hey everybody, welcome to Serenity Village Wednesday night Bible study. Thank you guys for tuning in. Feel free to share the feed if you're watching us on Facebook, invite people, and let us know where you're watching from. We've got people in a lot of different cities, in a lot of different states, in different countries that view in every week to our services, and it's awesome to see the connection and the community that happens online just by sharing where you're viewing from. So feel free to let us know, give us a shout out where you're watching from tonight. And before we get into our study, I wanted to take a minute and just show some gratitude for the volunteers, the partners, the people that are giving of their time, of their resources to make this happen right now. I'm sure you guys have seen the videos of what's been happening this past week, the amount of food that's been given out to people in need, and I cannot share my gratitude enough for every single volunteer, every single partner, everyone that's given financially to support this. So wherever you are, wherever you're watching from right now, if you're a partner, if you've been giving your time, your resources, your energy, your prayers to support this, sincerely thank you so much from the bottom of my heart and from everyone on staff here, every leadership person at Serenity. We can't do this without you guys, so continue to stay strong in it. You are making a huge difference. And to anyone watching who you're not really familiar with Serenity Village Community Church, what we do, you're kind of new to this whole thing within the last few weeks, I just want to thank you for coming, for watching this video, and for giving some time. I mean, time's a very valuable resource, but you're giving your time to see what's going on here. And so you might not be familiar with what it is. You might not be familiar with church, or maybe you are. Maybe you've had, some bad experiences with churches in the past. Maybe you've gotten burnt by churches, by hypocrisy, by any issues. Maybe you've had a great experience with church growing up. Whatever the case is, I want you to know that we're not perfect, but what you are seeing is an example of what it looks like when a community of believers, united in their faith in God, come together when the world around them is in crisis, and how that impacts the community. So wherever you've come from in this journey, thank you for being here tonight. We are going to get started. We've got some really interesting material to cover tonight, and we've titled this Biblical Examples of How to Focus During a Crisis. And I completely understand that title seems a little bit bland, a little bit boring to some of us. And you probably already think at least where this is going to be going. You probably, if you're a seasoned Christian, you probably already know a few verses that we're going to use. Maybe you think we're going to talk about Acts 16 and how, even if you're in the prison, you should sing and praise. And that's all great. But I encourage you to stick around, because there's some principles we want to get to tonight that you find in the Word of God that are severely, severely needed in today's world. Severely needed not just in the world around us, but in churches. So we're going to look at a few things here, a few biblical examples, and my goal is to go a little bit beyond the what to do. When you're in crisis, when the world around you is panicking, there is great advice on what to do in Scripture. But I want tonight to go a little bit deeper than the what, because there's something I learned just being a leader and being led myself. If you don't have a why behind the what that you're doing, eventually you will lose steam and you will crumble. And while it is extremely important to focus on the what to do at times, if there's not a why and an understanding behind that, it won't last super long. You can get some short-term results from that, but ultimately people with a strong connection to why they're doing something will go, and you won't be able to stop those people. And so I asked myself the question the last few weeks, why are we doing this? And why is this all happening? I'm sure there are many people that are now coming to the point during this crisis where we're asking, why is this happening? There are people asking me, why is God letting this happen? Why, is the government acting this way? Why are people doing this? Why did this happen? Why? And there's a million different scenarios and bunny trails we can go down with that why. But I actually want to address it because, believe it or not, the Bible talks about God's response when we ask these questions. It gives us specific examples on heroes throughout history and how they have actually asked the same exact question. So if you are asking that question, why is this happening? You're not alone, and you're not the first person to ask that. So we're going to look in Judges chapter 6, starting in verse 12. Now this is the story of Gideon. Many of you might be familiar with his story, and there's a lot of things to pull from the life of Gideon, but we're just going to try to focus on a few things here. Starting in verse 12, the angel of the Lord appeared to him, talking about Gideon, and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O valiant warrior." Then Gideon said to him, and this is the question that so many people today ask, "O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." Stop there for just a moment. If people are being honest with themselves and honest with each other, we've all come to this question at some point in our lives. We get a word, we see it online, we go to church, we hear this word, God is with you, and that's absolutely true. But then we look around us, look around ourselves and our communities and our country, and we see all these terrible things that are legitimately terrible happening. And we can't help but hear this question, why is this happening? If God's really with us, then why is all of this happening? That's where Gideon's at too. And it's so interesting to me how God responds, how the Lord responds to this question, because he doesn't write it off as an insignificant thing, but he also doesn't try to go point through point with Gideon and refute everything. I mean, let's just look at it here. In verse 14, the Lord looked at him and said, "Go in this your strength and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you?" Now, this is so cool. When you look at the context of what's going on around Gideon, around Israel at the time, they are being oppressed by Midian, greatly so, to the point where Midian will come through with their armies, with their people, destroy all their food, destroy their livestock, and just kind of leave them to rot. And Gideon's actually hiding at the time when the angel comes to him and this conversation's happening. So there are legitimate, terrible things happening to Gideon and to the people of Israel at this time. And he asks, why is all this happening? If you're really with us, why is this happening? And I love that God doesn't feel the need to defend himself, because it's kind of an accusation, and it's an honest one. But God is so confident and so secure, he doesn't feel the need to try to counter Gideon's points. In fact, that's kind of, if we're asking this question, usually what we are looking for is, whose fault is this? Who can I blame for what's going on around me? And that's another legitimate feeling. Because if you peel back the layers of that thought, let's just think about this for a minute. You see an injustice going on in the world. You see something that is actually terrible and wrong, and you know that it's not okay. You know it's not good. You know it's not beneficial. And this question of why is this happening comes up, because you want to know who is ultimately responsible for this occurring. The reason you want to know that is so that you can go to that person and either assign the blame to them to make them fix it and right that wrong, or so that you can extract revenge or justification upon that person for making that evil thing happen. It's a natural thing to feel and to ask this question. And it's so confusing at times why God responds this way, because he doesn't say, well, this is why this happened, this is why this happened, this is what I'm gonna do here, this is what I did there. He doesn't do that. He just says, go in this, your strength, and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead here, but notice a principle that's being laid here. Yeah, the things that are happening are terrible. They are wrong. I've sent you to go and fix it. I've sent you to deliver the people. You see, at times and I think Gideon in this example, we're so used to looking for an external blame because we're looking for an external response. We're looking for the miracle to come in and fix it. We're looking for some hero in society to rise up and fix this. Maybe at times God is saying, don't you realize that you are actually the miracle that's meant to save and deliver these people? Just a thought here. So we ask that question. And I think many times, and this applies to Gideon's situation as well, but primarily ours, I think many times God really is moving and God is doing incredible things, but you might not see them depending on where you're looking, especially in a time like this, because we're all familiar with the panic of the world. We're all familiar with the crisis, and we don't devalue how important that is and how critical that truly is. But then we also have examples like here this last weekend and the weekend before and weeks before of people stepping up, rising up, and being the hands and feet of Christ, feeding the people that are hungry, clothing those who don't have clothes, bringing help and medicine and aid to people that need it. So maybe it just depends on where you're looking. If all that you're seeing is your favorite news station that you got playing on at your house 24/7 because you've got to stay updated with the latest things, then maybe you won't see the things that God's doing. There's this thing called selective attention. When you study different aspects of psychology, and actually you can just go on YouTube and look at this. A friend of mine shared a video with me. It was called the selective attention test. And it's so interesting what happens here. And this is kind of a psychological experiment that they've done. And many people have done it in different ways. One of the more famous ones, and you can find this online, is that you'll have two teams, like 4 or 5 people on each team, one dressed in white, one dressed in black. They each hold a ball. And your assignment as the viewer is to count how many times the white team passes the ball in a given time period. And so they'll move around, they'll pass the ball, and you're focused on counting it. And some of you have probably seen these things online. At the end of the time, it gives you the correct amount of passes, and you kind of feel good or bad about yourself, whether you got the right amount or not, if you were focused enough and counted it right. But then it'll go back and say, but did you notice the moonwalking gorilla in the video? And they'll rewind it and show you that while you were focused on counting the passes, they actually had someone in a gorilla suit moonwalk through the frame, and you didn't even notice because you were so focused on what someone put in front of you. There's another really interesting one that goes a little bit farther, and they set up 9 different little cups. You know the little ball in a cup game? You put a ball in a cup, you move 3 different cups around, you see if you can find it when it's done moving. We're all familiar with that. They take 9 different little cups. 3 are blue, 3 are yellow, and 3 are red. They put a little Hershey's Kiss under one of them. They move it around for a certain period of time. And then at the end, they say, do you know where it is? And most people are pretty good and they can find it. But then they ask, did you see the duck? And what you might not have noticed was during the movement, they had brought a rubber ducky into the table to replace one of the cups and then took it out. If you did catch that, there was at one point where there were 5 different hands instead of 4 different hands moving the cups around, and most people don't see that. If you even caught those first 2 things, most people don't notice that at the end, there are yellow, green, and red cups, when it started with yellow, blue, and red. All these different things happen while you're watching one screen, one video, and it's all happening in front of your eyes. So the question isn't what's going on. The question is, what are you focused on? Because you can actually distract someone from incredible things, from extremely noteworthy and impactful things happening right in front of them by giving them something to focus on, to acutely focus on. And I'm not bringing this up to try to get conspiratorial and say, what's happening behind the scenes while everyone's focused on COVID-19. That's not where I'm going with this, even though it is interesting when you kind of take a step back and think about that for a little bit. But let's focus on our principle here in Scripture. What you're focused on is going to be what you see. Gideon's focus was on all the circumstances around him because that was how they determined at that time and in that culture whether God was with them or whether he was not with them. See, the ultimate question was, is God truly with me? And the way he was coming to that answer was by what was happening around him. This is a trap as old as time that we all fall into. And the reason we fall into this sometimes is because we have an actual enemy. We're going to get to that more in a minute. But I want to go to the next verse here in verse 15. So he said to him, O Lord, how shall I deliver Israel? Behold, my family is the least in Manasseh, and I am the youngest in my father's house. But the Lord said to him, surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat Midian as one man. Now that statement from God at the very end there is so powerful. And it changes the game because he says, I will be with you. And that's become such a cliche for us because God's with us. He'll never leave us or forsake us. And we get all that, but then we still go through things. To understand what it means to have God with you, especially in his context. If God is truly all powerful, then wouldn't you want him on your side? And not only is he with Gideon, and he says, I will be with you. In fact, when you study that word out, especially in the Greek, we have a lot of passages we'll get to in the New Testament here, but in the Greek, when it talks about God being with us, the word literally means it's not just to have someone's back. It's actually, I am going with you. So when you go, I go. When you come back, I come back. You're coming and you're going. In fact, in the definition of the word itself, it's also talking about going to war. And so it's saying, if you were to say, I'm with you, if that person goes to war, you're going with them. So God is saying, I'm with you, and not in a metaphorical sense, in a very real mental, emotional, and physical sense. I'm with you. In fact, he says, you will defeat Midian as one man. So it's not going to be you on this side and God next to you fighting Midian. It's you and God together as one person that will deliver Israel. And he also points out, if we go back a bit, he says, go in this your strength. He doesn't say, go in my strength, or go in the strength I will give you. Even though Gideon's strength does come from God, we understand that context. But he's saying, go in your strength. In other words, you're not waiting for me to flip a switch for you. You've got this right now. You are actually the one called and empowered and have the ability to deliver your people. That is incredible. And that is what changes Gideon. So we see this question of why. And now we've seen how things will get better, because Gideon is the one who will be rising up, going with God to deliver his people. Now, the reason you need that is because there is an actual enemy. Now, in this case, the enemy is Midian. But we know, because we know we're so much more wise and we have so much more information than the people in the Old Testament, which is great. I'm being a little facetious there. But we know there's an enemy. So yes, the enemy was Midian, but really there's an adversary. There's an enemy behind them that's causing this, that's coming against Israel, wanting to come against the people of God. And that's the same enemy that exists today. In fact, in the Old Testament, and we won't get too much into this, but they really didn't have a lot of names for Satan, for the devil. It was the adversary. It was, I know there's something or someone coming against me, and sometimes they pinned it on God when it wasn't God. They didn't really know exactly, but they knew there was an adversary. Today we have a little bit more clarity than that, but it's interesting that even with our clarity now, we know there's an enemy. We know that his goal is to steal, kill, and destroy. We know his one mission is to bring us down, to cause harm, and yet we're so confused when harm and evil comes. We're so confused as to what's going on here. And I don't mean to make light of that, but let's go through this thought process here. Why are these bad things happening? Spoiler alert, we still have an enemy, and he still operates, and he can affect people in very real and very tangible ways. In fact, we see in 2 Corinthians 2:11, he says, so that no advantage would be taken of us by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his schemes. The greatest lie, the greatest wool that the enemy can pull over people's eyes is to make them think that he's not really doing anything, that he doesn't exist. But we should not be taken advantage of because we are not ignorant of his schemes. In schemes, the Greek, it actually means his mind, his way of thinking, his way of doing things. We need to be aware of that. If we're not aware of what the enemy's doing and that he is acting, then it's very difficult for us to take comfort in the strength that God has given us to go and fight against him. In 1 Peter 5:8, we see this again. Be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. I think this is one of the verses that, some people in Christianity, maybe we don't take this seriously enough. And this isn't to put the devil on a pedestal or to give him so much credit and to make us afraid of him. It's an awareness. Look at how he's described here. A roaring lion seeking who he can kill and devour. And at times, we kind of write this off as if it's just some, being that's going to tempt us to steal a cookie from the cookie jar. In fact, if you look at this, take a step back on a global scale, then maybe we shouldn't be surprised to find out that something comes in to distract us when something else is going on behind the scenes, because there's an actual enemy who's out to devour, to steal, kill, and destroy, and he can actually work through people. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised at that. I know it's been very, very hopeful and very bright so far, but let's keep going on here. In Matthew 28, verse 20, this is how we're connected to the story of Gideon. This is Jesus talking, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And lo, I am with you always. And I love this, even to the end of the age. These are the last words recorded by Matthew that Jesus spoke. It's kind of his parting gift to us. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. He does not ever leave us or forsake us. So what does that mean? How do we take that beyond a great bumper sticker and a great cliche? Well, another helpful place is John chapter 17, and I don't think we have a scripture slide for it. My apologies to our production team. In John chapter 17, when you have time, go and read this. This is one of the most powerful chapters in all of the Bible. It's Jesus' statement basically talking about how things will be now for us as believers because things are different. And he says, Father, the same glory you've given me, I've given them, that they may be one, just as we are one. Your oneness with God, that's why when God says you will defeat Midian as one man, and in John, when Jesus says, let they be one as we are one, you are one with God and Jesus to the same degree that Jesus and God are one. You have the same glory that God gave Jesus. You have the same spirit that God gave Jesus. You are one. There are no longer 2, 3, 4, 5. You are one, operating in that same spirit. Now, when you understand that and when we see that as our baseline, now we can see what it means to rise up as the hero that comes to deliver a people that are oppressed. But if all Gideon would have done is sat there and said, you know what? I'm not going to move. I'm not going to do anything until you explain yourself to me, God. Where have you been for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years? I want a PowerPoint presentation on why this happened, why you intervened here or didn't intervene here based on my perspective, thinking that our way of thinking can justify something that's happened. It can't. What we can have is a perspective and a mind that is calm, that is cool and collected. In fact, when it talks about in 1 Peter, in Matthew 20, that he's with us always. That's the concept that's being communicated. You don't have to fear things that come. You can have a calm mind. You can be calm, cooled, and collected during these times. It's actually one of the literal translations of it. It's very interesting to see. You can have that peace about you. And the reason I wanted to focus on is this. When you have that focus, here's who I am, here's what my Father has given me, here's how he is with me always, even to the end of time. Now you can see, what will I do to rise up? Because the what will vary from person to person. We see examples in Scripture, as I said, in Acts of the disciples being in prison, and their what at that time was to sing and worship. So maybe your what is to sing. Maybe it's to read your Bible on this given day. Maybe it's to take a nap. Maybe it's to go for a walk. Maybe it's to start a business. I don't know what your what is, but if we all have the same why, then we start to see how things come together. And our Father has promised that he can and will work all things together for the good, for those who love him. And what I hope you guys are seeing, beyond all the chaos in the world, beyond all the panic, beyond all the fear, even though we need to be aware, we need to take things seriously, we've gone over that. Beyond all that, I hope you see that God is doing something incredible, that you're a part of it, that you have an active part to play in this. In fact, without you, it's incomplete. So I want to encourage you guys. You have what it takes to rise up as a hero and a deliverer, even when the entire world around you is panicking, and know that you're not alone in it. And Serenity Village, we're one example of many churches that are stepping up, rising up, because the world needs what we have to offer more than ever. So we're going to transition now into a different time. We've got a really good panel in store for you. So what we're going to do, and again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for sharing the feed. Thank you for commenting and being a part of this conversation. What we're going to do now is we're going to show you a brief video of things that have happened here at the church for the last handful of days. Afterwards, we're going to have an incredible panel, so definitely stick around for that. We love you, we appreciate you, and we are praying for you.
This is Pastor Jeff Hill from Serenity Village Community Church. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, and we're doing another massive food distribution for those who are in need during the coronavirus. We're going to take you through the neighborhoods. Since about 11 a.m. this morning, the cars have been backed up throughout the neighborhoods. We learned a lot on Friday logistically on how to set this up, and hopefully we're going to have a better flow today. People are literally waiting for hours in line for this food. which really tells you about the need. As you can see from the aerial view, the massive amount of cars that have been waiting in line since 11 a.m. this morning for food. They're coming down Adair Avenue, coming off of Highway 100 and 36th Avenue. We have them also lined up at Fair School. And as we go down Adair here, we can see the cars going down 38th. They're coming in both directions. We have traffic attendants at every corner trying to do our best to keep the flow going. And as we go down 38th Avenue now, we're coming upon Douglas Drive. And let me tell you something, the vibe of the people waiting in line is absolutely incredible. People are grateful. They're grateful that the church is doing this for them. I am so grateful for our generous financial donors, our food partners, bringing semis of food to make this all possible for the community. As we go down Douglas Drive right now, you can see the cars flowing into the church. We're doing our best to get them in and out of the church parking lot as quick as possible. As we come up upon the church now on 41st Avenue, you can see how the distribution of the food is set up. We have semis of produce and food. It's more or less like a full grocery store. We have dairies, we have every type of produce, we have grains, we have fruits, we have milk, we have protein, meats, and chickens. So as the cars come into the parking lot, they open up their trunks and our teams give them food. Hot meals. Our chef has cooked over 5,000 meals to be given to the people today. And this is a first-class meal of hot chicken and vegetables. As they go around the corner now, you can see that we have different stations set up. As they turn the corner, now they're going into the cold section where they're giving them milk and things of that nature. The smiles, the gratitude of our volunteers is absolutely incredible. We've got praise and worship music playing as they come through. As you can see now, as they come through, when they leave the parking lot, there's a big sign that says, "You are loved." Our community taking care of the community and the masses. As we go above now with an aerial view, I can't help to think that this is Jesus's view from heaven as we are operating as his hands and feet. As a pastor, I am humbled as I look at this need being fulfilled. I'm grateful for our financial donors, our gracious food partners, and our incredible volunteers. I know fulfilling a need can cause a little bit of inconvenience to the community, but I believe fulfilling the need is worth the inconvenience. May God continue to bless us and keep us protected during this coronavirus season.
Here we are, and it's another day, and it's another day to be grateful. It's another day to really express our gratitude to God and really express our gratitude to our friends. And we've got two of our very, very close friends with us tonight that have been with us. How many years have we been together?
7. Almost 7.
7 years we've been together. And I wanted to bring Monica and Ellen in front of you because oftentimes they're not as visible as Pastor Jason and myself. When it comes to Monica, for those of you who do not know, we've got her father living with us and has been with us for many, many years since the passing of her mother. And we want to be very conscious of the spread of the coronavirus. We are paying attention to the 6-foot rule here. We do live together, so we're okay there. And the other two champions live together as well. And I didn't really know what it is that we're going to talk about tonight, but let's just go to the ladies first, starting with Monica. What has this season meant to you? What adjustments have you had to make?
Well, it hasn't been easy by any means. The adjustments have been pretty much on a daily basis. They have come with a lot of emotion, I think is the best word to use. I've had to adjust being away from here, which has been a big adjustment for me. I've had to adjust spending more time with my dad. I've had to adjust what your needs are from me. I've had to adjust in many, many different areas. I think just as everybody on the planet right now, actually. And I think first and foremost, the biggest adjustment that I had to make was really digging deep within myself and asking God to adjust with me. So I wasn't going through any of the adjustments by myself, and really just trying to be there for you as much as I can, and be there for all those who need me, who are around me, even virtually, over a phone call, over a text, over whatever way that I could be available. I had to adjust being available to people. So it's just been a whirlwind, but I think we're getting through it the best way that we can. Each and every day brings something new, so.
What empowers you, obviously, God, to not only adjust, but how do you dig deep in your relationship with Jesus to make the adjustments and not be on edge and in panic and worry and things of those natures? Because I've learned that women are carriers, hence how they carry a child in their womb for 9 months. So women are a little different than men and how they carry stuff, and they're meant to birth things as well. Not that men aren't, but where do you get your strength from with your relationship with God on all these adjustments that you've had to make?
So for me, prayer is probably the most important thing. As you know, and I know you've mentioned many times, the first thing that I do when I get out of bed in the morning is get down on my knees, and I just have my quiet time with God. I am able to really just thank him for waking me up for another day, and really just ask him to prepare me now more than ever for whatever today is going to bring. I've had to really make some intentional adjustments, I think, in order to have a deeper connection with him, such as digging deeper into devotionals, being more intentional about my connections with the ladies in my life, being willing to talk about stuff that I'm going through or feelings that I maybe don't even want to talk with you about sometimes because I don't want to burden you. But I have to remember that as long as I'm centered with God, as long as my connection with him is intact and improving on a daily basis, that I should be able to really handle, I don't know if it's the right word, but just be able to receive, as you were talking about us being carriers, being able to carry whatever the day brings. Being able to carry, somebody else's burden sometimes is so essential, but I'm not going to be able to do that unless my relationship with God is intact. And for me, prayer, I think, is the most consistent and the most powerful way. And it always has been, not to say that I don't get into my word or have other ways to connect with God, but prayer is the most important thing for me.
I look at the different dynamics of the four of us who are sitting here. Our children are grown and gone, one being married and the other two in college and stuff of that nature. So when it comes to the expectations that we have on our leadership, it's different with every family. Given that the Websters have 3 small children at home, but the dynamics even of your home have changed since the coronavirus. Pastor Jason is now working out of the home. So what adjustments, Ellen, have you had to make?
I think it's been hard in the sense that knowing he's there, my mind thinks that he's here, he's going to help me with everything. And I have to adjust that because he's not there to help with everything all the time because he still has to work. So in my mind, there's been times I've gotten frustrated because I feel like he should be doing more. And then I have to step back and realize, you know what, he's doing a lot. I just don't see it because it's behind a closed door in the office. And he has a responsibility still to that area and also to preparing for the Bible study and doing ministry stuff as well. And so for me, getting past my expectations and realizing that I need to keep the same routine I always have, because without that routine, then it creates division within us together, because then I'm feeling let down by him, and I know that that's unrealistic.
how do you come to that conclusion within yourself that you may be thinking in the wrong direction, that to really, it's different, but it's the same. It's as if he was at the office working, because that's his responsibility for the company he works for, but not really. How did you come to that conclusion within yourself? I'm sure it's an ongoing challenge to get peace. Are you talking to people about sometimes you're frustrated and you want him to do more, but then you come to the conclusion within your maturity that that's unrealistic because he has a job to do? How does Ellen remain peaceful as she becomes frustrated?
A lot of that came through just having honest discussions with him. Just a couple of days ago, we had a discussion because I was frustrated. I said, you know what, you're here, you're home more. I feel like you should be doing more to help me, because you're here more, there's more clutter, so I need your help in doing this. And he took it really well, and he said, you know what, I'm gonna do what I can, but also at the same time, you have to understand that I'm not just here to be here and to slack off. I have stuff I have to get done, And it was a harsh reality for me in the moment, but I tend to think through things and I remind myself, here's what reality is and here's what I expect. And I just try each and every moment, it's never easy, but to try to see from somebody else's perspective. And so my rethinking that on my own in the moment, I'm sure he was like, you are being difficult and everything, but after I stepped away from it and we had that discussion, then I was able to think through and process on my own as I usually do and come back and say, you know what, I was being unrealistic and I have my expectations, but I need to check them. And it's not unreasonable for me to have a little bit of help, but it's unreasonable for me to ask him to drop everything when he's in the middle of a meeting or in the middle of working on stuff and come and help me. So I think a lot of it's just trying to see from somebody else's perspective, which we don't always slow down to try to do. And I'm guilty of doing the same thing, but just taking a step back, it's not like I don't have the time to take the step back right now. So I think if we are intentional about stepping back, then we can take that time and look at people's perspectives.
So today, when I did my live out of Jesus Calling and did the proverb a day, the assignment was to tell God how you're feeling. And you look at the Psalms and with David, and he is a great example through the pain he had to walk through to just have that communication with God direct. So the both of you carry a lot of weight in your different circumstances. And as your pastor, Ellen, over the years, and it's no different than anybody else on the planet, everyone wants to be understood. And they want to be understood with the challenges that they face. So the question I have for Pastor Jason is, now granted you're home at night, you're home on the weekends, you're an incredible father, but has this opened your eyes a little bit for being now home during the week, the responsibilities that Ellen carries with the children?
It really has put, I guess, kind of an additional layer of perspective on it. Years ago, there was times where we were both working, and so there was times that I would be home with the kids during the day and she'd be working during the day, and then we'd flip. So I had a bit of a understanding on what it entailed. But I think that was like a couple kids ago, and 3 is a lot more than 1. And then you add a dog on top of that. So there's just, the way life is now is not the way it was. And so that was one of the biggest shifts I had to see was, I think I know how it was at this time, but life is very different now. And so the demands are different now. The responsibilities are different now. And it really has given me a different perspective on her end. It's one thing to know it intellectually, but then to see it firsthand, because I can spend all day at the office thinking about, well, I know she has to do this. I know she's probably dealing with this. But then to see it, and then to see it all happen at once, in the chaos of the moment, it definitely adds a different appreciation.
Is that when you hide in your office?
Absolutely.
What about you with being the primary caregiver for your father? Who knows what that feels like?
Well, I think If you're talking about talking to God about my feelings, I do that quite often, especially when it comes to my dad. And I know that there are a lot of people that do care for their elderly parents, and I didn't really know what that was like until I had to do it. And I applaud everyone who has the willingness to do it, because I know some people's circumstances are a lot different than ours. I mean, Papa's healthy, he's strong, he's goofy, he's funny, he loves to be around people. And I know for a lot of people it isn't that easy. Not to say that being there for him is easy, but it's a lot easier than I think it could be, and it is for a lot of people. For me, I think just being around him and being the only person, especially right now, that he has constant communication with, and so often the only communication with, I sometimes find myself also getting frustrated with him, because sometimes he can act like a little kid. And then I check myself. And then I just have to remind myself that God gave me this opportunity. God gifted me this opportunity to really be able to take care of him and be his primary caregiver, and really just focus my attention on him. So I have to change my perspective, and I ask God to really help me do that. Sometimes when I find myself getting frustrated, I'll just ask God to just, give me the patience and in the moment, and to give me something to give to him, because he's also going through a huge adjustment. And, I don't know about your parents, but our parents really don't talk about their feelings a whole lot. So I don't really know what he's feeling often, because he's always so positive and cheery. And I know that sometimes inside he's got to be hurting as well, kind of being stuck in the house for as long as he has been, and just not being able to have, all the people here at church that he's so used to being around. And so I ask God to give me something to give to him when I feel like I can't, when I feel like I'm at a place where I'm frustrated or depleted or in my emotions. I just ask God to be able to give me something that I can give to him that can turn my perspective around, but then it could also feed him whatever he needs, because sometimes I just don't know what that is.
How do you make sure, because it happens to all of us, that at one point it's a blessing, and it's still a blessing, but now psychologically and emotionally, it's a burden. It's a burden. Which was once a blessing has now become a burden. And it could be anything. It could be a job. It could be a car. It could be a number of different things that you were once so excited about. But what does it feel like when you're kind of transitioning, and how do you catch yourself when it's a blessing, but then you start to think it's a burden? What does that feel like, Ellen?
It makes me think of when you have kids. When you first have them, then you're so excited and nothing can separate you, and then eventually, they start to get on your nerves and they start to act out and behaviors come up. But you have to take that step back and remind yourself, what, this is a blessing. Like, there's people that don't have this. There's people that don't get to experience this. And I think taking that time for yourself, and as you've always taught me, is to take a step back and take a little break sometimes, have somebody else try to take over a little bit, and so you get your break. I think a lot of why our blessings turn into burdens is because we focus so much on them and we don't ever take our eyes off of that. And so then we get overwhelmed with that responsibility, and I think sometimes we just need to take a break, even if it's just like 10 minutes, and just walk away and then come back to it and remind ourselves, what, this is a blessing. It's not a burden. There's times that it can feel burdensome, but just coming up with strategies to counteract those thoughts when they come up, and learn that you sometimes just do need to take that break and step away.
I think, when I'm listening to you, what I'm hearing the Spirit say is the blessing possibly carries a big burden. And if you try to carry, manage, and evolve within whatever the blessing is in your life, if you try to do it in your own strength, then it becomes a burden. And for me, a good indicator of that is when I become frustrated, when I become irritated and agitated, and and stuff of that nature. And it's a good recourse for me to take a step back. And I think that's really where the Holy Spirit has got us, really, identifying with what you're feeling. Because when it becomes a burden, you can't really sort out your feelings in a way that is probably the most effective way to do it. But I have watched the two of you truly work through some adverse challenges in life, and you're stronger because of it. So what would you have to say about a blessing and a burden?
Well, I think I just learned something very powerful from Ellen when you said sometimes we start to see our blessings as burdens because we focus so much on them. And I think that was a light bulb moment for me. For me, I feel like, and okay, we're just on the topic of my dad, so I don't mean to, make it sound like I don't like having him live with us. I love it. But I was thinking about this earlier today when I was just, kind of in my head and really just thinking some thoughts that, to your point, I had to take a step back and realize that having him with me all the time is a blessing. It may not always feel like it, but it is. And just because something doesn't necessarily feel like a blessing in the moment doesn't mean it's not still a blessing. It might just feel a little different for a moment, but when you're able to take a step back and really process those feelings, and where my mind led me to was, I am the one that gets to be with him every single day and will be until it's time for the Lord to take him home. My brother doesn't get that. My sister doesn't get that. And I'm not saying that, I feel like I'm, super privileged to have him. I'm just blessed that God chose me to be the one. And graciously enough, you agreed to have him be with us. So it's just a matter of really refocusing and taking a look at it from a different perspective, which is something that, what you just said really compounded what I was already thinking earlier today. And I just love what is on that video reel that you, one of the clips where you said something about being grateful for your blessings or they will become burdens. And that is something that since the moment that you said it, has been kind of playing through my mind, especially during these times of uncertainty, of adversity, of, just big question marks that are going through our minds each and every day. We have no idea what we're going to wake up to what the day is going to bring. You turn on the news and you're not sure what you're going to get, what more bad news you're going to get. So it's up to us to be able to turn that bad news or that negativity or whatever it is that we're focusing on, if that blessing has become a burden, turn it back into a blessing. And we have the power to do that. It may not come right away, but it will come if we ask God to help us with it.
Where do you see God moving in this season, Ellen?
I see him moving everywhere, honestly. Just last night, I was out there for the second time in the past week helping with the food handouts and everything, and there was one lady who drove up, and I'll never forget, she said to us, I can't even imagine how many people this is going to lead to Jesus. And that, to me, is huge. I honestly believe with all my heart that this is the church's moment. This is a moment specifically created by God, for God. There's so many ways that churches could step up in this moment, and I guess when this is all over, we'll see how many actually rose to the challenge. But I am very proud that our church is rising to that challenge. That's something on my heart, is you always say, maximize your moments. And this moment is the church's moment. And I see so many churches worried about having to close their doors and everything. And it breaks my heart. And I know that there's definitely a financial need in a lot of churches. Our church is not lacking that either, but in this moment, we need to look beyond financial as well and just seize the opportunities that come our way. And so to me, God is moving in every way. We just have to step out open your door and he's moving right in front of you. I mean, each person, I mean, God's given us different talents and everything, and we just have to do it. You know, a lot of us are busy. I mean, my life hasn't changed too drastically since this all started. I'm still home with my kids all the time. But I mean, last night I was able to step out and go help, you know, and that was just for a couple hours, and it was when he got off work. And so it's like, that was me trying to maximize my moment and get out and serve and do something beyond just me. And so I think God's moving everywhere. We just have to step into it.
So you're saying and you're sensing and you're seeing God moving like I've never seen God move before. Where is God moving internally in Ellen?
A lot of this has brought up started to bring up, I mean, we've had a lot of different things go on the last month personally and stuff like that. And so that's kind of come out, and it just reminds me to look beyond the virus. And I feel like that's something that God's putting on my heart a lot, is to look beyond just what's going on right now. Because if we look beyond it, like, that's another thing. Our focus is on that. We're not realizing, like, there's so many other things going on with people. So many people are hurting beyond this. I mean, this virus came, but there's still people who are having babies. There's still people who are losing babies. There's still people who are going through cancer, and their families are struggling with loss. And I think my heart is impressed upon checking in on those people and making sure they're still okay. Because yeah, the virus is scary, but it's no different than the other scary things that come. It's just big and in the media right now. And so I think that's what's right in front of us, but we have to look beyond what's right in front of us and see the other things, the other ways that people are hurting as well, and reach out in those areas as well. And so I think in my heart, God's just bringing to light all those areas as well. You know, I think it's great that we're stepping out and helping those people, but we can't forget about the people that are hurting in other areas as well.
I think that's a valid point, and that's one thing that we're not doing with continuing to do everything we've always done, but to your point, maximize your moment and step up the very things that on top of what we were already doing. And I also hear in the spiritual realm you saying, focusing on the unseen, looking beyond the seen. Where do you see God moving in this season?
God, as Ellen said, God's moving everywhere. And, you know, it's almost a shame to say that we needed something like COVID-19 to really open up some of our eyes to see that he's always been moving, and that he's constantly moving, and that he's moving over us and above us and around us and beneath us, and most importantly within us. And to Ellen's point, you know, we have to learn to look beyond that and remember that there are still so many people who like, the world hasn't stopped moving. It might feel like it has right now in certain ways. Certain things that we used to do have stopped and have been put on pause, but the world has continued to wake us up every morning with the sun rising and put us to bed every night with the moonlight. And that's God. So that hasn't stopped moving. The earth hasn't stopped spinning. We haven't fallen off of it. I mean, God is just everywhere. And what I feel like in my heart, it's just an opportunity for me personally to really step up and do the things that God has already called me to do, but at another level. And all of the things that Ellen was talking about, maximizing our moments as a church, and with your leadership, we've been able to do that and beyond. We've been able to continue everything that has gone on during the week prior to, you know, our whatever stay-at-home order is continuing. I mean, we're still here on a Wednesday night, obviously adhering to guidelines, and you know, Pastor Jason still did the Bible study, and now you are adding these additional components to bring our church community, our church family together. So God is just honoring that, and he's honoring everybody that's still staying connected and all of the new people that are wanting to get connected. The platforms that we have right now, even though they're virtual, we are still having a human connection with another person. And in the center of every connection that we're having as the church is Christ. God is at the center of it all. And that reminds me of something that Nikki, our daughter, said when you had her up here on the stage just a few days ago. She said, God doesn't just live in the four walls of the church. God lives in your homes. And I thought that that was amazing, because you talked to her about, what is it like for, and this would probably be a good question for you guys, but I feel like God is really just telling us, hey, slow down a minute. You have been walking around looking down at your phone or on your computer or whatever the latest technology is, and we've lost connection with the people that we love the most, the people in our own homes. So I don't know. I feel like God is like moving in such a huge way that he's forcing us back to get back to the basics and to get back to our home, to our family units first and foremost, where so many people spend so much time at work. And we have to. It's just the way of our world today. It's the way of our society. You have to work. You have to be able to, support your family and provide for your family. And those of us that are able to work, it's a gift. It's a gift. But I think, to Alan's point also, that gift of being able to work had become a burden for so many. And now it's like, okay, take a step back. God's like, your job, I gave that to you. Your family, I gave that to you first. Your family comes first. So let's bring you back to your family, and let's get you recentered into your family, and then everything else will fall back into place. When he's gonna make that happen, I don't know. Like I said, it's a day-to-day thing. But as long as the sun rises, and that's the S-U-N, and the moon falls every night, as long as the S-O-N is in the middle of it, I think we're going to be okay.
I was up at the cabin and I saw a picture of a sunset from on the other side of the dock out into the lake, and exactly what you just said. I mean, that was taken probably 15 years ago, and that's still the same sun. Yep. It's still the same lake out there, and what's in my spirit to say as I'm listening to you is, you don't know what you got until it's gone. So I think a deeper level of appreciation, a deeper level of gratitude that we're forced to be in, all the things that we most likely took for granted in our lives. It's all being stripped away right now. And I love what you said, to get back to the basics. Before we wrap it up here, I want to talk about, because the Spirit's got us on, I've been teaching about Paul and Timothy. This relationship we have with you is a kingdom relationship. It's a relationship that the enemy has tried to pull apart for many, many years. It's a relationship that you could only be here all these years later if we were and are connected at a heart level. If we really know each other's motives. I'm going to fail you. I'm a pretty hard mover and very direct, and I just come with it real. I don't sugarcoat anything. But God has protected this relationship throughout the entirety of the relationship. And for that, Monica and I are extremely grateful. We're extremely grateful for the two of you. But what does this kingdom relationship mean to the two of you? Starting with Pastor.
Oh man, it has meant and continues to mean quite a few different things. To try to narrow it down into some specifics here without taking an hour and a half, it's made me realize the importance of a heart connection and the importance of making decisions with a clear head. I've learned that the enemy will love to trip people up in any way he can. And in a sense, you fall, you mess up, you can get back on track. But there can be damage done from the falling. And we've been very blessed that in times where he's tried to pull us apart, in times, just the two of us or in the relationship, that it seems like we've had clear heads for the most part. Like, I've made plenty of mistakes in this relationship in my entire life, but I've been able to see God's advice and his hand guide in ways that preserve things long term. So there might be pain in the short term now, but long term it's been preserved. And I've learned and grown so much from the relationship that if you were to, take me 7 years ago and, tell me the things that I would learn and grow in, I don't think I would have believed it. And it's because I I didn't write off you as a person and as a heart when there might have been confusion about the relationship. And that was such an important thing, because I've learned so much from that, even in times where the enemy wants to confuse things and paint things in lights that they're not truly in. And I guess the main thing is, if the heart connection is there, then you can withstand anything that comes along.
That's good. What about you, Ellen?
This relationship means everything to me. Like I said before, recently we had something personal come up, and you were the first person I thought of. I want to call Pastor, and I want to talk to him about this. I want to let him know what's going on. So I know a few years ago when we left for a little while, my heart was broken, because I love you guys so much. And when you leave something, you never know if the relationship is going to stay intact, And I was a little angry at the time, because I felt like it was very hard on me, because we have such a strong relationship. But I remember talking to God about it, because I was a little mad at him, like, why is this happening, and everything, and why couldn't you just work everything? Why couldn't everybody just work together to make this work and everything, But then it was like God spoke to me and calmed my heart and said, you know what, this is what needs to happen, this is the right thing. And so then, even though it hurt, I knew, this is where God is leading us. This is what God's doing. And I think sometimes we have to let something go. And if we let it go, God doesn't always bring it back, but sometimes he does. And when we let go, then we never expected to be back where we are now. We never in a million years would have thought that we would be back where we are, doing what we're doing and having the kind of relationship that is even stronger than it was before. And so I think that was a big thing for me, was learning to trust. And always, if there was ever a question on motives or anything, I just always remember thinking, you know his heart, you know her heart, and you have to trust their heart. And you have to trust that God knows your heart and God knows their heart, and that God knows what he's doing. And if we hadn't let go, then we wouldn't be where we are today.
It's not so much in life what happens to you, it's how you handle what happens to you. They hear from me all the time, and I'm not saying you don't tell them, but I'm in their face all the time. What does this relationship, from your perspective, mean to you about them?
You two are absolutely amazing in every way. I couldn't ask for two more genuine, pure-hearted people to walk alongside us in this journey that God has us all on. You, Ellen, have such a special place in my heart. And I probably don't tell you often enough, but I think I did tell you that one time, just how safe I felt just having you near me when you sat up in the front with me. I don't remember what event it was, but I just felt just such a safety and a security. And I know that God put you in my life for that, because I don't always feel that from the people that I'm surrounded by. And not to say that, I'm feeling sketchy about people or anything like that, but there was just something special about that moment that I had with you. And to me, God was telling me, she loves you in a special way. It was God telling me in a special way what your heart connection to my heart was. And that, to me, I will never forget that moment and where we were sitting. And it's like God is just allowing us and affording us a new opportunity to really just delve into what that really is. And I just want you to know that I'm always here for you as your spiritual mother, as a guide, as a shoulder to cry on, as a friend. And I'm grateful that God has placed me in that role for you. But I'm also grateful that he's placed you in the role of a spiritual daughter that can give me that comfort that I received, and that God really pointed that out to me. That was special. And Pastor Jason, you have just always held a special place in my heart as well, obviously in a different way. I know you and Pastor Jeff have a different relationship that you and I do, but there has always been solid is what I think of when I look at you and when I think of you, because you're a person that has you're just solid. You don't waver. What you say is what you mean, and what you say, what you just say what you mean. You walk your walk with integrity. And I just am so proud of you. I am really proud of everything that you guys have conquered in the last 7 years. And I know that it's only because you put God in the center of your marriage, you put God in the center of your family, you put God in the center of your heart. And it's evident to each and every person who has been privileged enough to attend a Wednesday night Bible study here in the sanctuary, and now everybody that gets to hear from your heart, which is God pouring into your heart every Wednesday online. You two as a couple are powerful, and I don't know that you realize that. I know that a lot of couples, a lot of young families look up to you, and they look to you for guidance. And that's hard sometimes, because it's really hard for me to remember that about him and I, when sometimes I just want it to be husband and wife, or just Jeff and Monica. But that's not what God had planned for us. And God has amazing plans for you guys as well, and for your children. I mean, it's just a blessing to have been able to be partners with you on this journey. And I'm excited for what the rest of our lives has, what God has in store for us.
We're over our time by a little bit. I'm going to have Ellen pray us out.
Dear God, I just thank you so much for this time, for this opportunity. I thank you for all the people that we're reaching right now during this time that we wouldn't have reached otherwise. God, I just pray that you would just help us to continue to maximize these moments. I pray that you would just give each and every person a peace, that peace that surpasses understanding, dear God, that we can walk through this and we can walk through it because we're doing it together, and that we're relying on you and we're trusting in you. And I just pray a special blessing over Pastor and Monica, dear God, that you would just be with them and guide them and keep them safe and keep them healthy. And we pray that you would just guide each of us each and every day of how we can continue to follow you during this time, and how you can continue to give us that peace, even though the world is throwing us curveballs right and left and trying to distract us from you, dear God, that we continue to focus on you and that we continue to walk forward, because that's what you have called us to do during this time and each and every day following. And we just thank you and praise you for everything you're doing. Amen.
Amen. Have a great night.